Councilor Edwards is going to give us a community update. And all set.
All right. Well, a couple quick announcements. Happy Valentine's Day.
Same to you.
Also, congratulations to our representative here. I actually call you one of my favorite constituents, actually. So congratulations. I'll get you a citation.
You in the 75?
No, I sent him a letter of recommendation to the speaker. I always support my constituents when they're seeking a higher office and promotion. So congratulations again. It's a huge deal for us, as you already know. I wanted to talk about some other good things that have happened at the city level. Then I'll get into some policies, some initiatives that we're kicking off, and then open up for questions. So at the city level, today it was announced, I think, and we put it on Facebook. CPA grantees have been put forward, and we did really well in the North End. The way the process is, the CPC, the Community Preservation Committee, makes recommendations for certain financial grants in housing, historic preservation, and open space, and then those grants then come to the City Council, and then we have to vote on that. So that vote, I want to say, is March 3rd or February 27th, but that's when it will happen. But for the North End, there are two major grants that we received, or recommended grants that we received, that I will support, which is for Langone Park, $1 million for sea level rise mitigation to implement some features to prevent flooding, which I thought was really good for us. And then also Knights of Columbus is receiving $1.9 million from the CPA funding for 23 affordable elderly homes, or elderly apartments. Yeah. Oh my God. Sorry about that. So we're really excited about seeing that the funding that we put in and that additional tax come directly back to our neighborhood. And again, if you put in grants for or applications for the CPA and did not get it, there's another round coming up, and it will continue to be on an annual basis. So again, get your grants together. We go through each one. We then support certain ones with a letter of recommendation, and then also advocate for them with the CPA committee. So thank you so much for those who did put those grants in, and we were happy to support them. All right, so recently, I'm sure many of you have heard about the Clean Streets Initiative that we are launching as a community to make sure that we come together as a community and assure that the cleanliness and that this gem of the neighborhood really shines as much as possible. And I want to talk a little bit about how that process came about and then where we are right now. So the idea of this initiative actually occurred after meeting with folks who came to my office, particularly frustrated with the trash issues and pickup here in the North End. There was a group of them that came, local business owners, some residents, and folks who said, we need to work together to figure this out. We also had then several coffee hours, as you know, last year, where folks came in and the number one issue was, again, trash. And so it was between those meetings and talking to folks, we eventually did set up a meeting with the downtown bid folks with our representative Aaron Michaelowitz was also there. We learned a little bit more about how community came together in the downtown bid to also generate the funds needed to really allow for those funds, which is the key component of this, to stay in the community where they're raised. Because with all of our tax dollars, we know we pump in a lot into the city's coffers. We're not getting our percentage back for our fair share. We are an economic engine for the city of Boston, and we're not getting that back. We are getting services, there's no doubt of it, and this is not a knock at all on the city of Boston or Mayor Walsh on the services, but we need more. And that's okay to say. So ultimately, after talking about the downtown bid process, it's relatively complicated. It's limited to folks who own property, many of whom don't live in the North End, and they would have to support an increase in taxes on their property in a community that they may own property, but don't necessarily live in. And so we thought there's got to be an informal way to also raise funds amongst ourselves. And you can look around at many of the services. We have excellent schools, we have wonderful parks, and all of those initiatives, they are a city service, but the community of the North End has risen to the occasion to rise for more resources for those very same services. This is the same thing. This is, again, an attempt to gather some resources to ultimately hire some hokies to full-time, but we'll start off smaller, clean the neighborhood on a regular basis all throughout the week. We were working together to come up with levels of contribution. We have a fiscal sponsor, so under a nonprofit, so donations can go to the local nonprofit. that nonprofit, we created a LL, or a small corporation under that to receive the funds and to make sure that we are transparent with those funds, but also to make sure that we set contribution suggested levels. These are not requirements, it's completely voluntary. Tenants can contribute to this, landlords can contribute to this, I can contribute to this, Aaron can contribute to this. All the folks can contribute small amounts to make sure that we are creating a kitty. What we think is really exciting is the opportunity for local businesses to contribute to this. And depending on the size of the contribution, being able to well sponsor a hoagie that says brought to you by whichever restaurant is as they're picking up and cleaning throughout our neighborhood. We think it's a creative response to supplement city services. And we expect to start small, make sure that we hire the right folks, make sure we're hiring folks who may need that second chance. There's a lot of folks coming from recovery homes, there are a lot of folks who would like the opportunity to have regular good work, and then ultimately let them get to work. We hope to kick this off in April, and we see it's relatively small, supplementing city services with really starting on the weekends. And we'll see, we'll work it, we'll make sure that it's working out. So Saturdays and Sundays and having folks regularly cleaning up, actually when a lot of the tourists are here, and it comes right in that wonderful space where you have that gap between trash services. So you go from there, but also we think, well, what else can we do with the money if this works out? We can expand the days and the hours that they're working, but also maybe, buy some more trash containers, because there's a lot of gaps between them, between the trash containers here in the North End. We just need more. So there's ways in which we can, with this committee, all North Enders, we're coming up with this creative, I think it's a wonderful creative community building activity to make sure that we are generating money for our community and for the betterment of it. So that's the Clean Streets Initiative. It is not meant in any way, shape, or form for me to say, awesome, you got this, and I'm moving on. Hardly. We're going straight to budget season, and I'm fighting extremely hard to make sure the North End gets its fair share from the city coffers. Looking at how we can, again, tackle the rat problem with dry ice, which we were told is extremely expensive. And that's why in many cases it's not being implemented. Well, we want to come back and say that's not enough for you to tell us it's too expensive. We need this as a quality of life issue. And we in this community are suffering in a particular way from that. We will also be advocating and piggybacking on what the representative mentioned. It's about enforcement when it comes to traffic. We've had people email, tell us that their foot was run over. We have people talking about how cars are zooming through the community, and we need police patrol. We need folks out there, and that's about enforcement, and that's again about a budget issue that we need to bring back to the North End to make sure that we have folks there directing traffic and making sure that we are as safe as possible. And ultimately, we think, or I personally am excited to continue to advocate for all of the potholes, continue to make sure that the streets are filled in. We didn't get the BOVAs this year. We will go back to that curve and make sure that we can keep going for that. But we're looking at literally from the streets. We've done our walking tour with the streets initiatives, with complete streets initiatives with the city of Boston. We highlighted all the components down to the tree roots that are popping up and making it extremely hard for folks to move around with dignity. And I'm talking about folks who have wheelchairs or who have mobility issues. They've fallen out of their wheelchairs in the North End, just trying to get from point A to point B. That's not a life of dignity, and the city needs to pay to make sure that they have that. And I'll be advocating for all those things. So I wanted to make sure. Also, a way of generating funds and making sure that we have the revenue is looking at increasing the fines for trash pickup. When you have an absentee landlord, or when you have someone who's not actually doing their fair share and cleaning up in front of their building, you wonder if they're a local business, if a $150 fine really matters to them. We are going to talk about how we can increase that to a fine or fee, maybe after the second or third fine or fee, that it really increases and makes it matter to them. And so that's something I'd love to hear your feedback on, and what numbers you think would be high enough. $1,000 might be too high. Oh no, I see a nod in the back, never mind. Maybe on the third offense, third strike, it's $1,000 going forward, but we're not calling attention with a $150 fine for them, so they need to do their part. In terms of additional initiatives, or some of the things I'm doing in the city council, I'm sure some of you saw the article about the transfer fee that I've introduced, which is a home rule petition. This is a transfer fee that would generate funds for affordable housing. How it works. If you are selling a home for your home, if you are selling a home that you do not live in, all right, this does not apply to owner occupants. But if you sell your property that you don't live in for more than $2 million, then the transfer fee would apply. It's about 6%, 3% for the buyer, 3% for the seller. That fee would apply, and those fees would go to affordable housing. We have many exemptions, along with not only do you have to not live in the property, it's like an investment property. We also are going to make sure that if you're the buyer and you're an affordable housing nonprofit, you would be exempt. This is intended to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and based on our calculations on the past 2 years with just properties that sold over $2 million, we could generate $170 to $350 million for affordable housing in the city of Boston. It's a huge amount of money, and we do need it. We absolutely need it to make sure that our city remains open. So that's the initiative. It actually mirrors already something pending at the State House. There's a local option for the transfer fee. It isn't from 0.5 to 2%. So we are certainly leading the pack in one of the larger amounts, but it allows for flexibility. And so that's the transfer fee concept. It's basically trying to get at folks who are speculating in our neighborhoods, who are coming in here, who are buying and trading and selling units, not occupying them, buying hold. Buy, hold, usually evict who's in it, keep it downtown, and hold on to it until they can sell it for twice as much. And when I worked at the city, we saw it happen. We saw someone buy a unit for $1 million on Monday, sold it for $1.5 million on Friday. Didn't put a doorknob on it. No one occupied it. They are playing our housing stock like it's the new Wall Street, and it's trying to make sure that they pay into affordable housing. It's flexible enough that if $2 million is too low, we can go higher. The higher we go, the more likely we're to hit just commercial properties. But this is the conversation that I'm happy that I kicked off. And I'm happy to hear from you about your feedback about how 6% too high, is $2 million too low. The other component in there that I'm also happy to have a conversation about, probably the most controversial, is the flipping tax. In that, we can go up to 25% on flipping of houses in Boston. And I can speak certainly to East Boston's experience with flippers. They flipped so fast and so horribly with such shoddy work, the wall fell down. Not on the flipped house, but on the neighboring house. And all those folks were homeless for a year. We've had 3 buildings fall due to shoddy work and people trying to make as much money as possible with flipping. The flipping timeline we have is 2 years. So within 24 months, if you have your property and you're not buying and just immediately selling it, within those 2 years, if you're over the 2 years, you're not considered a flip. So these are wonderful conversations, and we've gotten actually a huge amount of positive feedback about this. As you know, 65% of Boston is actually renters. But most of the folks who are excited about this is excited about seeing a revenue come in directly for affordable housing in this city. So I'm sure I'll get plenty of questions about that. We will be kicking off coffee hours in April. Just want to let you know that. So we'll come back to the community, sit down and talk with folks as they have concerns. A couple other things I want to remind people of what we did accomplish last year and resources that are now available. The City Council passed the back tax ordinance that was written by myself and Councilor Flynn. That assures that seniors who fall back in their taxes or fall behind in their taxes, that they will be given a payment plan of up to 5 years and 50% of the interest will be forgiven. The interest is at 16%, by the way. This is to assure that folks who are seniors who are in their homes are assured that they will, essentially going forward, will never face a foreclosure or tax foreclosure on their homes. You will find many seniors are house rich but income poor due to someone dying, due to widows, due to whatever. They find themselves in a situation where they're not paying their taxes, their property taxes on a quarterly basis. And that mounts very, very quickly. So this is an immediate relief for seniors. We look forward to expanding the class of individuals who will also get the benefits of this back tax ordinance. We are working.
You said 16%.
That's what it is right now. 16%. 16%. Yeah, it's extremely high. It's extremely high. So the other, a couple other initiatives I wanted to make sure, we already talked about Airbnb, but just to let you know, the parts of Airbnb that are continuing are the fact that it should be limited to owner occupants and to 1 unit. in those buildings. We've also made sure that we do have a registry. What we have been sued about specifically is the fact that we required in our legislation for Airbnb or other host communities or other host sites to give us a list of where they are, to give it to us, because we figured we needed to check, let's see if this person is registered or not. They sued about that. We also basically said if you don't give us the list and if you accidentally list an unregistered unit, we would fine you $300 a day. They sued us about that. So that's what we're being sued about. Basically, they're saying you're asking us to enforce the law, and I don't know. I get fines if I don't put my trash out, so I don't know that the city's saying I'm asking to enforce the trash law. But the arguments I think are pretty weak. But the city has agreed to withhold those two enforcement mechanisms and allow for the rest to go through, which does require the registry, which does ban folks who don't live in their homes from having an Airbnb. So that's going forward. Or has gone forward. Then just want to let you know some of the current struggles we are having right now in the North End, and something I'm very passionate about and will be committed to, is the Mercantile building and assuring that that building is affordable and assuring that folks are not displaced. The Mercantile building is an expiring use building under 13A. After 40 years of deed restriction, that deed restriction has ended, and what that means for the next 3 years is that the rents in the Mercantile and the affordable units will go up 3% each year until they're completely market. So we're talking about folks, this is one of the few, besides the Asonia, which is BHA housing, this is one of the few sets of affordable housing in the North End. It's worth fighting for and to keep. Yes, the city is working extremely hard to help the individuals. Some of them have vouchers. We're trying to move those vouchers to another location. Some of them are, we're working with folks to find possibly with the new senior center. There's tons of work of trying to do, I would call it kind of a fire drill, trying to deal with the individuals. But as those individuals leave, the unit no longer will be affordable. We're talking about like 3-bedroom family units in the North End that will be gone. Will be gone as affordable units. And that's part of the fight that we're part of, is to make sure that they stay there. And how we can do that. I'm on the Neighborhood Housing Trust. We're thinking about ways to direct some of that funding towards preserving 13A affordability. It's a lot of creative ways to get there. But I can assure you, if we had that transfer fee tax of $170 to $350 million coming in, that would be extremely helpful to help keep these buildings affordable. So that's what I am in the middle of those crux, and it's an emergency situation. I've seen this community rally for the nursing home. I hope you will rally to keep the Mercantile affordable and keep our neighbors here. Let's see, I think I'll leave that right now and take on any questions.
Hi Lydia, Dave Goggins, North Street. Thank you very much for listening to your constituents and recognizing what the key issues in terms of quality of life are with respect to trash and litter. I applaud your efforts in terms of coming up with new ideas on how to make this a cleaner neighborhood. And I agree that the Hokies are a great idea. What I'm not sure about is DPW has a Hokie program right now throughout the city. And I know that we've had sometimes 2 Hokies in the neighborhood at one time, but most of the time it's only been 1 Hokie during the week. I'm wondering why is it that we can't get DPW to expand the Hokie program and assign increased number of Hokies to neighborhoods that need it? I mean, I understand there's an equity issue here with other neighborhoods, but we don't treat the police department on an equity basis. They deploy police officers to the highest crime areas. If we have a higher than normal tourist traffic coming to our neighborhood generating trash, why can't we get a higher deployment of Hokies in the neighborhood?
I completely agree. That's worth advocating for, but we do have 2 Hokies during the summer. But I will say this, even with the Hokies that are coming through, you can have 3, 4, 5. None of them are working on the weekend, which is what this program would help supplement for. But I also...
Well, my question is, why do we need to have a privately financed supplemental program? Why can't the city better allocate its trash disposal and trash and clean street initiatives on their own and provide the adequate services that we need in the neighborhood?
No, you can argue, I guess you can argue about any other initiative that raises more money. for city services. The Elliott School, for example. We do provide public education, and yet we do rally and raise a lot of money for those things as well. And I am responding directly to a neighborhood that has an emergency situation right now, and this is one way to respond to that. The other way is through the continued advocacy that I have been doing for Hokies in this neighborhood. But I'm not willing to wait for the city to finally listen to get the Hokies and the resources that we need right now. We need to respond to that, and that's what I'm doing right now with this. Now, it's of course it's a volunteer program, but what I would say to any folks who don't feel that we're getting enough of the DPW resources is to continue to write also the city as well. We are advocating for those Hokies to come here. Completely agree with you. I actually think we're going up to an additional 20 additional Hokies are being hired, but again, it's for the entire city. To put things in perspective, the North End's had 2 at some point. It may have had 2 again this summer. East Boston has 1 for the entire set. So if you want to talk about needs and resources, I think the city, if they're going to be providing additional Hokies, is going to be the neighborhoods as big as East Boston that literally has just 1. And that's the challenge of the city constantly having to allocate resources throughout the city. Every neighborhood could argue that they're in an emergency situation. Every single one. But what's frustrating with DPW and other city resources is that despite our taxes going in the same pool, they will be spread around no matter what we do. What this Clean Streets Initiative does is it keeps our money here for things that we're prioritizing. So I will continue to advocate, and I completely agree with your frustrations, but I'm trying to respond to something right now.
Thank you.
And Dave, we do have 2 full-time Hokies, which is more than any other neighborhood in the city. So for a neighborhood our size, like we do have 2 dedicated full-time Hokies year-round.
Not
just in
dedicated.
the summer.
They're not dedicated. We went weeks when only had 1 Hokie. And the second Hokie is often not in the North End.
It's for our entire area, so they do the outskirts too, because sometimes slack, but we do have, and it is confirmed as 2 dedicated full-time Hokies, which other neighborhoods don't have. So out of all the neighborhoods in the city, this very small neighborhood, which deserves the services that it's getting, does have 2, which is more than the other neighborhoods, so.
On paper, yes.
Quick follow-up, and then I know you had a question.
Thank you for the intro, so I don't have to say all the nice things you said. My question is, and maybe this was contemplated and I wasn't involved, so forgive my ignorance if it was discussed, but the businesses that are benefiting from all the people that are coming to the neighborhood that are making the mess, because I don't think it's like us that's like barfing on the sidewalk. So the businesses that are serving those people and, you know, the bars and whatever that are making all the money from the people that are coming and then making a mess, was it contemplated to ask in a more aggressive way for the businesses to contribute, not just on a voluntary basis, but, you know, kind of in the spirit of a bid, hey, y'all are really benefiting from all these people that are making a mess, so help pay for cleaning it up, kind of thing?
It's certainly contemplated to just, but you can't on a volunteer program just demand or say that they should do this. But the incentives that we can provide, such as free advertising on someone's actual uniform saying brought to you by, you know, one of the local restaurants to help clean up our streets, I think that's a huge benefit to them. They're walking around, the tourists are seeing this person with this huge thing advertising, this restaurant paid for me to clean up this area. So we actually have, and we're still we actually have some folks who are very interested, local businesses who want to contribute. So we actually had several folks approach us quite privately right now to say that they're in it and they completely support this. And I actually think it'll be a snowball effect as people see businesses increase. And I'm hoping you would support those businesses that go extra and beyond their own tax base to help clean up our new neighborhood, that then we would support them. I think it'll have a snowball effect, pressure, by peer pressure, you know. So, yeah.
I think one of the issues that we encounter, especially on the weekends, is inequitable allocation of space in terms of our right-of-way. So we have a lot of people squeezed onto really kind of narrow sidewalks, going to restaurants, businesses, walking around, and then a ton of space that's devoted to parked cars or cars that are Ubers and Lyfts, especially, that are driving down Hanover and Salem Street. Have we ever explored doing something like an open Hanover, open Salem, like has done a couple of times a year on Newbury Street?
Yeah. We have, and I would that's beyond my institutional memory, which is very short. But I do know that, and I was looking for Aaron, I do know that he had been part of that conversation.
There
We
were
have looked at
discussions to open up Hanover
Yes.
Street for a weekend. There was talk about actually doing it last fall, but it just didn't come together in time.
But I do know something that might be helpful also with the Ubers and the Lyfts that we've recently done in East Boston with a large project, is have a drop-off, pick-off section just for them. Some people might argue that we're in the North End, we're small enough that asking them to all congregate at one place and just wait for their folks there, like they do at the airport or someplace else, might also help with the, because if you don't know a neighborhood, you'll find a lot of the Ubers and Lyfts are from New York and Connecticut,
Yep.
and they drive like that, and they don't know what they're doing, where they're going the wrong way, and so on and so forth. It might be something we're talking, and happy to talk with BTD, about pushing them towards an area in the North End to drop off and pick up, versus just double, triple parking outside of apartment building to wait for somebody. Look at that.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lydia, just to reinforce what he's asking, years ago, there were many plans afoot to stop the traffic completely, make Hanover Street one way, and nobody liked anything that was said. And that's why it was never
Story
done.
Street, if you can't get to the side streets like Fred Street, Parmenter Street, Charter Street, I mean, you can't close the neighborhood off just because you want Ubers and Lyfts to go down the street and people be able to go dropping off mics. But that's a real problem, closing off Hanover Street. It's been discussed before.
I know that there's Ford and
So just a few things. Yes, they did discuss about closing Hanover Street down, and I think the residents were against it
Yeah.
foremost. Because Hanover Street is our main street, and you cannot get down any of the other streets. And they felt as though that the restaurants would profit off of that, and leave the residents where we are with the trash and everything else. I feel as though you brought up about the barrels, about, the Hokies. And, you say there's only one Hokie in all of East Boston, but does East Boston have as many tourists, as many restaurants as we do? And I think it should go on more of that type of basis than, oh, look at how big East Boston is compared to the North End. I think that it should be more of, the more tourists that we get, the more, restaurants that we have. And on your question, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Jen.
The restaurants turned us down. This was before Lydia. When we asked them to please pitch in, help us get a Hokie, help us do something with the trash, they turned us down. They said they pay their taxes, they clean in front of their restaurants, they wanted nothing to do with it. And so this is why I think now Lydia is coming up with a great idea for this. And yes, it does promote the businesses, by having them wear things, but that's the only reason they're doing it. So I'm sorry to say that, but, if they're gonna do that, then fine. But we did go to all the businesses a long time ago and ask them for that. Having a Hokie on the weekend is the most important thing, I think, because that's where most of our trash generates.
And can I just, I want folks to understand, this was a genesis of a lot of people and a frustration and a lot of institutional knowledge. So I do want to thank the North Enders who came. You were at the first meeting, actually, where you were like, we got to do something. So this has been a team effort, amazing folks in the community. Yes, it has been. And the things we learned from the past initiatives, it started and stopped, all of that was brought into the room to help bring about this initiative, and we're lucky to work with the representative. So this is, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We just,
Okay,
work
I'm
some chase
sorry.
here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very, very